Hello, I'm Alex, and in this tutorial I will be teaching you about frames in Flash. So I'm using Adobe Flash Professional CS6, and this is purely on information about this version of Flash, and may not be true for all versions of Flash, so just be sure that you're looking at CS6. And I am also using ActionScript 3, which is what I use for all of my tutorials. So this is Flash, and just a basic rundown of some of the things. Although this tutorial is mostly about frames, you kind of just need a background knowledge of all the things in Flash. So let me just change my setup. There. Now this is probably what you're going to see when you go into Flash, if you haven't set up any other, well, setups in Flash. And setups are basically just the way that all of your different things, I guess, are arranged, like your properties panel, your library, your tools, your timeline, where it is on in the window. So yeah, so this is the stage, which is basically where all your things are. This is your timeline, your properties panel, your library, your tools, and some other things. Now I'll probably make tutorials going into depth about some of the different things in Flash, but today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on frames, which are in your timeline. Now all of these little rectangle box-like things in your timeline are frames, and there are multiple different types of frames in Flash. There are keyframes, blank keyframes, and what I call blank frames, which are these. Now, there may be more, but none that I've come across so far. I might have to update this or something and let you know if there are more keyframes or frames that I've come across. So I'll start by talking about these blank frames here. Basically, to Flash, when you play your scene or your animation or whatever it is that you're making, these frames don't exist as far as Flash is concerned. These frames their whole purpose is just to give you somewhere to put another keyframe or a blank keyframe as you see fit your needs for Flash. So this is how you're going to always start, which is with a blank keyframe. And this blank keyframe is basically a keyframe, but with nothing in it. There's nothing on the stage, there's no coding in it, there's basically nothing. You can tell this from the way that it is white and the dot in it is white. And because they're not colored, you can tell that they're blank. Now if I was to put something in it, for example, if I were to draw, say, a box, you can see that the keyframe changes to be colored. The background becomes grey and the dot becomes black. This is what you would call just a keyframe. Now if I delete this, it goes back to being a blank keyframe because there's nothing in it. Creating keyframes and blank keyframes is very easy. All you do is you click on the frame that you want to make a new keyframe or blank keyframe. For example, if I just clicked on 15, that's frame number 15, you simply go up to Insert, Timeline, and then you have your frames. You have your frame, your keyframe, and your blank keyframe. Now here's the difference between inserting a frame, a keyframe, and a blank keyframe. If you have something here, for example, my box. And you go to 15, and you want it to be a duplicate, and you want everything in between it to show the same scene on your stage. Then you would go Insert, Timeline, Frame, and everything here is all the same. I'll just undo that. Here we go. But if you wanted to do something in this frame and also have it all the same, then you go to Timeline and Keyframe. And everything's still the same, but you can change this frame. And it is its own separate frame, which just so happens to have the same stuff in it that everything else here has. Now, if you wanted everything up to this point to be the same, but this point not to have whatever is in this frame over here, that's when you would use a blank keyframe. And these aren't used very often. These are used maybe if you have a text box maybe that has instructions in it and you want the instructions to stop being told after a certain point, maybe you would use a blank keyframe. I personally don't use it very often, but it definitely has its purposes. A shorthand way of creating a keyframe is by clicking on it, the frame I mean, and right clicking, and then you have your little menu, and you have Insert Frame, Keyframe, and Blank Keyframe, which is pretty simple. Some laptops and computers, in their system preferences, they don't have their right click, how do you say, enabled or activated, that's the word, activated, in which case you just go Option click, sorry not Option, Control click on the frame, and you can insert the frame, the keyframe, and the blank keyframe. So that's how that's done. Now, there's some cool qualities about frames that you can do, and one of them is that you can click and drag it, and by doing that you move it. So see how I've moved this over here, but this has become blank? That's because I've basically said, no, I don't want that over here anymore, now I want it over here. And Flash is thinking, okay, now what am I going to do to fill out this space? I know, I'll put in a blank keyframe. So that's what that does. Sorry, I'm just backing up. Okay, let's say I insert a keyframe here. And let's say I've made it too short. I've made it only 5 frames long and I wanted it to be 15 frames long. I would then click and drag it to 15 and it just elongates this kind of frame block. And that's how you do that. You can also create keyframes where there weren't any keyframes by doing a similar thing. But first I'll show you how to remove frames, because it's not so simple as just clicking delete. If you click delete while on a frame, it just deletes everything that was on that frame, which creates a blank keyframe. But if you want to remove it, you have to right click, remove frames. Or you can go up to Edit, Timeline, Remove Frames. And that's the longhand version. So say I wanted to make a keyframe here, you just click here, drag it, and a keyframe appears. And that is that. I'm pretty sure that's all of the basics that covered when it comes to frames. Please do let me know if there's anything I've forgotten, any questions you have about frames. Please contact me. I have a Gmail account, which is alexflash504@gmail.com. So yeah, thanks for watching.